What's good out there, Liquid Trucking? Welcome in to the Liquid Trucking Podcast. You know, sometimes I use the term peek behind the curtain, and I'm going to give you a little peek behind the curtain right there. I just went full bore, full throat into that intro. What's good out there, Liquid drivers? Didn't have my mic on, so that'll be fun for our audio editor, Mike, to see the video attached to this and realize that I'm moving my mouth and nothing is coming out. That's a first for this program. Welcome into episode 61 of the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Marcus. We're happy to have you here. Today is a big day on the Liquid Trucking Podcast, and I'm just going to jump right into it. We'll get to some homework and stuff like that later, but I'm very excited about an interview that we have coming up for you here in a few minutes. We are going to talk to Heather Fry from Truckers Against Trafficking. And let me tell you, fantastic interview. You don't have to worry about that. Heather is a pro, and she's been featured on a lot of different media outlets. So she's very good at coming in here and getting to the point and being very succinct. And it's just a fantastic interview, absolutely jam-packed with information about human trafficking, and there's some important distinctions in there. You know, we'll kind of reflect on it a little bit in the outro, but as you listen through this, think about some of the things that you had misconceptions about, because I know I had a bunch of them, and this interview did a great job of really kind of straightening out my take on what's going on here. So, and a big get for the Liquid Trucking Podcast. We have been very fortunate. Of course, every driver and every staff member from Liquid that we get on this show, we are more than grateful for, and you guys are first and foremost. Your priority A1 in our book. But when we can get some big names on this show as well, you know, we're always going to try to do that. And from different industry professionals to people like Mira Pandit, who can give us an economist perspective on the whole thing, to a lady like Heather Fry from Truckers Against Trafficking, who's out there doing great things and saving people almost every single day of the week. So it really just goes to show you how much we've grown in 61 episodes. That's not that long. That's, 1 year and change in the life of a podcast is pretty short, to be honest with you. So in 1 year and change, the people we've gotten on this show, man, high fives all around. Like, if I could line up every single Liquid driver and stand on the side of the road and do like a spirit line, you guys just drive by and slap me high five, I absolutely would. I'd fly all the way to Plattsmouth just to do that. Since that's probably not going to happen, think about these podcast episodes as giant high fives, because without you guys, this wouldn't happen. We wouldn't have the ability to reach out to people like Heather Fry and Mira Pandit and say, hey, we have this podcast and the drivers are listening and they're interacting and they want to be a part of it, and we're just trying to give them the best content that we can. If you guys weren't involved in this, these people would never even send me a reply, okay? I want to be real honest with you there. We would not hear back from them if you guys didn't provide us with the content that you do. So big high fives, hugs, attaboys, hats off, all that good stuff to all of you guys, because the podcast is growing and we are getting some whales on this show. Very exciting stuff. Okay, before we get into the interview with Heather Fry, I do want to remind you, you got to go over to the website and check it out. Head over to liquidtrucking.com, click the banner at the top of the page. That is where you can find our landing page for the podcast. Everything that you need to know about the podcast is there, including all of the episodes. You can get information about people that came on the show. You can see what we're talking about. If we have pictures or recipes or anything like that to share with you guys, we're always going to put them up there. Which reminds me, we haven't talked about food in a while on this show. And I'm just not okay with that, because I'm always thinking about it. It's like food, dogs, and football. It pretty much covers it for me. Oh, and podcasting's pretty important too. All jokes aside, go check out the website. There's some very good work that was done there, and I think you'll really enjoy it. If that's not where you listen, understand that's where like 80, probably 85% of our listens come from, is the website. So look, if you're listening on Spotify or any of the rest of these apps, more power to you. I'm all good with that. There is a little bit more to do on the website, so make sure you at least just go over there and check it out. I wanted to, before we got into the interview, talk a little bit more on like the zoomed out scale about human trafficking, okay? When we get into this interview with Heather, we're going to talk pretty specifically about Truckers Against Trafficking and how truck drivers can aid, how they can get certified, all that good stuff. But human trafficking is nary a problem that only affects those of us in the transportation industry, okay? It's obviously global. And when you hear the scale of just the people that they are catching globally in human trafficking, I think it's really going to open your eyes a little bit to how much can be done here stateside, maybe even just in your own hometown, because, you know, you're going to hear it. They've already saved millions of people and counting with Truckers Against Trafficking. And unfortunately, it's kind of just like a start. I don't want to say drop in the ocean because that makes it seem like it's negative. The work that they're doing is incredibly positive, but it is kind of a drop in the ocean, unfortunately. So here's some stats. Now, in 2003, this again deals with global law enforcement data where human trafficking is concerned. Trafficking in persons is what they call it. And some of this is for labor, where like tracking like trafficking slaves, basically. And some of it is like non-labor related. And who knows what are happening with those poor people. But like I said, again, the numbers are staggering. So we've got numbers here because the United States Department of State actually requires that foreign governments provide data on trafficking investigations, prosecutions, convictions, and sentences in order to meet minimum standards for the elimination of trafficking. So this report that I'm about to read from here was first gathered in 2004. By 2007, they had seen a massive explosion in their numbers and were starting to get worried, which is why we're tracking this stuff and why the Department of State is so adamant that foreign countries send us their data so we can try to keep our thumb on it because it's out of control. Let's start not too far back. I want to go back to 2017, okay? If we went all the way back to 2007, we're going to be very depressed at the end of this segment. So we're going to just get back in the near future. We all remember 2017, 3 years before the world shut down and everybody lost their shit. Maybe you wouldn't believe it, maybe you would, but 17,471 prosecutions for human trafficking violations across the planet in 2017. 7,135 convictions. And here's the real staggering number, okay? Because you hear 17,000 trials and 7,000 convictions, and you think, man, I feel like we missed out on 10,000 right there. And you're probably right, but listen to this number. With 7,135 convictions, we had 96,960 victims identified. That is the number that I want to focus on here, okay? Because with the legal system in our country and countries across the globe, listen, it's not a perfect system. It doesn't always work. There are loopholes that good lawyers get bad criminals off on all the time, and it's going to happen here too, and especially in some of these underdeveloped countries across the globe where they might not have the resources that our law enforcement does to go after these criminals in the first place. I like seeing that we identified in 2017 nearly 100,000 victims. But, there's always a but, I can't say it really gets much better than that. It's going to keep going up, save for a couple of what I'll call anomalies here. Like 2018, 11,000 prosecutions, 7,500 convictions, 85,613 victims identified. 2019, 11,800 prosecutions. I love this number because it gets a lot closer. 9,548 convictions. That's what I'm Taco Bell. Get me a couple more of those types of years. I would love to see it. And we have, in the year of 2019, 118,932 victims identified, up 30,000 from the prior year. 30,000. That's wild. I can't comprehend this. 2020, 9,876 prosecutions, 5,000 convictions, 109 5,216 victims identified in only 5,000 convictions. That's our lowest conviction number so far in 2020, and obviously there's good reason why. But more victims identified than the two first years we talked about, 2017 and 2018. That is wild. That means that the people that are trafficking in humans are trafficking more and more humans. Okay? That's what that means. Wild stuff. 2021, 10,500 prosecutions, only 5,200 convictions, 90,354 victims identified. 15,000 in 2022 prosecutions, 5,500 convictions, 115,000 identified victims. And finally, the last year of data that we have here, in 2023, 18,700 prosecutions, 7,100 convictions, 133,000 victims identified, you guys. Wild stuff when you think about it, okay? Wild. And I'm just going to do some quick math here. It's not good math. It's quick math. So what I'm doing here is I'm adding up over the past 5 years the number of victims identified by the global law enforcement data that the State Department puts out. This is going to be an ominous number. Now, they've already been some pretty ominous numbers, but this one is probably really going to blow your socks off because, like I said at the beginning, before I started reading these, the entire purpose of this is to try to shine a little bit of light on how big of a problem this actually is. It's not something that just happens here. Obviously, it's not something that we're going to fix overnight, obviously, but it is something that we can use the time that we have on this podcast to draw attention to. Over 5 years, 750,287 victims identified. Liquid trucking, that's almost 1 million, okay? 750,000 people. Think about the amount of people you know, people that you care about. Let's distill it down a little bit further. What do you got? 20, 30 people in your life that you truly love, care about. You know, you're laying down in front of a train for them. You're taking a bullet for them. 25, 30. Some of you might have bigger family systems than that. I understand. But on average, let's say that that's our capacity. Multiply that by God only knows how much. That math is way out of my league. Let's say 30. So 25,000 times the amount of people that you know were identified over the last 5 years as victims in human trafficking. That's why we're here today. That's the whole point. Put a bow on it, okay? Because this interview coming up is going to motivate some of you to go out and get certified and see what you can do to help. I promise you. I'm not even driving around. I'm not in the places they need me to be. I work right here from home. The wife is happy. I promise that I have not convinced her and promised her many things. In fact, she might even be the breadwinner in this family before too long. So there's no human trafficking going on at my workplace. But after doing this interview with Heather Fry, I sort of was sitting there thinking, man, getting certified might just be a good idea. I hit some rest stops. I hit some gas stations. I hit some grocery stores. You know, making a phone call can't hurt. I'm going to let you decide, though. Let's get to the interview with Heather Fry right now from Truckers Against Trafficking. Great stuff right around the corner.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
All right, Liquid Trucking, I'm very excited to bring you this next one. As we talked in the open, Truckers Against Trafficking, a fantastic organization, and I'm sitting here right now looking at a counter on the website that says over 2,063,629 people trained to recognize and report human trafficking. That's a phenomenal number. Joining me here today is the Director of Industry Training for Truckers Against Trafficking, Heather Fry. Heather, thank you so much for joining us on the Liquid Trucking Podcast today.
Yes, thanks for having me, Marcus.
It is an amazing mission that you guys have, but I want to make sure that all the truck drivers out there listening really understand what that mission was. Now, I know that Truckers Against Trafficking was established in 2009, but I think you'll do a much better job of stating that mission, so hit me with it. What is Truckers Against Trafficking's main goal?
Yes, our mission is to educate, equip, empower, and mobilize members of key industries and agencies to combat human trafficking. And the reason that we even exist is because globally, human trafficking is a huge issue. Over 50 million people are enslaved in the world today, and human trafficking is a $236 billion per year industry.
Wow.
So when we look at the number of truck drivers who are out on the roads, I mean, it's massive. There are millions of them who can really assist law enforcement as they're out and about doing their everyday jobs. Who better than to recognize signs of human trafficking? And so we want to make sure that we get our free training in front of every truck driver in North America so that we can build up a mobile army out on the roads who are able to assist law enforcement. And what we're asking them to do is simply just make a phone call if they are seeing something.
Now, this might be kind of an off the wall question here, but I'm going to go ahead and throw it at you. Was the entire idea about combating human trafficking from the get go, was it always thought to be right next to truckers? It was something that you were going to go with truckers to partner with for this? Or was there an idea that kind of blossomed before you realized that truckers were such a great resource here?
Well, it all started with a mom and her four daughters. So, Lynn Lieberg read a book about modern day slavery. And this was probably about 17 years ago. She read the book and decided to pull her four daughters around the dining room table to brainstorm what they were going to do about it. Lynn's family members had a hotel that truck drivers frequented, and so the idea came because in her interactions or just knowing that truck drivers were coming to the hotel, kind of a light bulb moment went off over her head that, wow, these truck drivers are truly in position to see trafficking where it's taking place at truck stops, at hotels and motels, city streets, places of business, and in terms of movers and in-home delivery, even inside of houses.
That's amazing. And how cool that the idea just, I feel like some of the best ideas in the world really are just that, capturing that one magic moment. And it takes multiple different avenues to get there and different people talking to you and involved in your life. But how cool that this was a dinner table conversation with a family. And here we are all these years later with such a great organization. And I mean, just hearing that number we mentioned off the top, over 2 million people that you've trained to recognize and report. Talk to me a little bit about the training program. How do drivers get involved with that? Where can they find it? Obviously, we want to make sure and hit your web address multiple times here because I know the website's a great resource for drivers looking to get involved.
Right. We make our training very easy and very accessible. So, what we offer is documentary style training films. So, we have one for over the road drivers, for local drivers, and for movers and in home delivery personnel. It can be accessed through multiple ways. So, for an owner operator, I suggest just going to our website, which is tatnonprofit.org, and you can access any of our trainings right from the website. And in under 30 minutes, a person can be trained.
Wow.
If it's a company, if somebody from a company is listening right now, we'd love to get you involved and train your drivers in a manner the way that you already roll out your training. So if you use an internal learning management system, we can deliver either an MP4 or a SCORM version of our training for you to upload into your LMS. We're also on a variety of external LMSs, Carrier's Edge, 10th Street, to name a couple that are coming to mind right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and a lot of people do in-person training. So if a company wants to train a group of people, we will give them the tools that they need to make that happen as well. So we want it to be easy. It's always free. It can be accomplished in less than 30 minutes.
That's amazing. And I see some literature on your website about scaling sustainably and making this something that you can really offer to not just a wide range, but the entire industry, really. I mean, you mentioned something that I can't believe I didn't even think about, but often forgotten in the trucking industry are movers, the people that they're still driving around a giant truck. They're just, they're a little more personal. Maybe they don't have to, drop and hook quite as much, but hey, they're still truck drivers and they are in a very unique position of being inside of people's homes. I'm interested in that. Is that did you find quite a bit of action there with the movers? Has that been a pretty successful avenue for Truckers Against Trafficking?
Well, what we know is that, residential brothels, trafficking's happening inside of homes. We know of parents who have trafficked their own children. And so there are very distinct opportunities where these, people who are delivering appliances or movers, anybody who's going inside of a home, they can spot signs very easily. Maybe there's pornography, just, excessive amounts of pornography or camera equipment set up, or the opportunity to see multiple, typically men, coming to a residence in increments of 15, 20 minutes at a time. So there are some telltale signs to be on the lookout for, even for those who are going into homes.
That's so interesting to me, and I just love that you guys have thought this through so well. I mean, it really takes a group, an organization like yours to figure out all the nuance in such a complicated issue here, and it's a bit terrifying. I'll be honest with you, Heather, when I hear you say that you guys know about people that have trafficked their own children and that this could be happening. I mean, we all live in neighborhoods, right? It could be right around the corner from you, and you'd never know it. And certain bit of that's a little bit earth-shaking, really.
Yeah, and I think traffickers are really hoping that we are going to buy into the storyline that Hollywood wants to sell us, that we're only going to be looking for something that looks a little bit more sensationalized than it actually is. Mm-hmm. Traffickers will use common tactics: force, fraud, and coercion. So force, you can think of what that might be. Fraud would be, false promises. And this could look like, a false expression of interest. Maybe somebody saying, hey, I'm going to love you forever. I'm going to give you everything that your parents never did. I'm going to buy you these things. And so it's not going to look like somebody being kidnapped on the street or being shackled and chained in a basement. Coercion, the final one of the tactics, is often probably the most powerful of all the tactics, and this relies on threats. So threatening to harm either the person themselves, the victim themselves, or a loved one, or threatening to ruin their reputation. So I know that if somebody were going to threaten to harm my child, I likely would do whatever they're telling me to do. And I may even look like I'm a part of my own exploitation, because they're grooming me. They're telling me how to act. So when we, roll out this training, we want to kind of dispel some of the myths and shine the light on the realities that trafficking situations aren't going to look like some Hollywood action movie. They're going to be a lot more subtle. And we just need to open our eyes and start looking at people as potential victims, perhaps in need of some kindness. And our ask through our training is that people pick up the phone and simply make a phone call. Mm-hmm. We don't want them to interact with a trafficker. We don't want them to try to intervene in any way. If they're seeing something, if it's an active crime, call 911. If they're not really sure, we want them to call the human trafficking hotline. And that number is 888-373-7888. They are equipped and will ask questions to determine if law enforcement needs to intervene, and they will take it from there. So really, just knowing what to look for starts this process of this mobile army being out and about, shining the spotlight in dark corners where traffickers think that they're hiding. Mm-hmm. And we need more people to do that. So yes, 2 million sounds like a lot of people, and we need more.
Drop in the bucket, right? We need as many as we can get for this mission. And it's so interesting to me, thinking about the difference between what a kidnapping might look like and what somebody who is in a position that they just don't know a way out. And a lot of times with the Hollywood sensationalization of especially kidnapping, and in some forms human trafficking as well, you see a lot of reference to Stockholm Syndrome, which is where people are in a situation for so long, they just kind of become okay with it. And even though they might be a victim, they're just kind of rolling with the punches at this point because they've psychologically checked out that there's ever going to be a way that they're going to get out. Is that something that you guys see very often with some of the people that you've helped, where you've got a victim that's just they're in it. They just know that this is their life now, and they're not really actively trying to get themselves out. Actively trying. I don't want to victim blame at all here. I
Yeah.
think that's part of what I'm trying to get to in the question is with some of these stories. How many times do you see a victim that is not really just a telltale victim? You couldn't look at them and just know immediately.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I wouldn't say that Stockholm syndrome maybe is something that we talk about very often, but what we do talk about is the fact that many victims don't identify as victims. So, because of those tactics, especially the false expressions of romantic interest or friendship or a familial setting. So, let's take an abused teenager, for example, who runs away. A trafficker is going to be there to meet them and meet all of their needs. A trafficker is going to give them shelter, food, acceptance, love, and pull them into a family structure where they feel like they belong. But then the dialogue is going to be flipped. And there's going to be this piece where the victim is now indebted to that person, and the trafficker will then tell them how they're going to pay back this debt. And it could be through forced labor, it could be through forced sex, and we'll just call it rape. And so, what is the problem? When people say, "Well, why don't they just get out?" Well, number one, they don't even see themselves as a victim. They maybe don't even know what human trafficking is. All they know is this person is taking care of them, providing all of their needs, and then they also just have to go out and do this terrible act, which is
Right.
terrible. But yeah, so I don't know that perhaps Stockholm syndrome is an issue, but more than likely it is the case that there was a study, for example, let me just interject this. In 2021, Polaris put out a report based on survivor accounts. And what they found was 83% of those identified victims knew their trafficker. So a
Wow.
huge percentage of them know these people and don't think that they're necessarily doing anything, wrong. So that's an issue there.
That and just how tragic for the people that are being victimized here, because you try to put yourself in other people's shoes and try to understand from their perspective. It's a very hard thing we as humans try to do, but that's one where I don't know that I could ever actually see myself in that situation and actually understand what that person is going through, especially the 83% of them that know the person that's doing this to them. We all rely on our families, our loved ones, our friends, our circle of people, and just imagining that one of those people could take you as a victim and just exploit you for in perpetuity. It really is just kind of spine quivering, to be honest with you, Heather. And I know I've been saying that a lot, but I feel like I really want to drive home the fact that this is a massive problem. It's a huge industry, which you said in the middle, however many billions of dollars these people are making. I know here at the Liquid Trucking Podcast, we want to do everything we can to get drivers certified, to get you guys more eyes out there on the street, because like I said, frankly, it's terrifying. I'm so happy that you do what you do. I do want to ask about other resources for drivers. We've talked about the training. That's available at tatnonprofit.org. If you're a company out there listening, we've already told you that there's some other resources there where you can train company-wide. What else can drivers do here to try to get involved, Heather, to get trained up and make sure that they're ready to go out there and spot these things?
Yeah, I would say download our app. So the TAT app is available for iOS and Android. They can go to their app store and download it for free. And it is a fabulous tool. All of the training videos are right there in the app. It has all of the red flags that you can tailor to whichever niche you are in. So local drivers can choose local drivers, over the road can choose over the road. And there's also bus and energy. We also have training videos for those two industries. And there's also an option for the general public. So I know that our audience is the trucking community, but they've got husbands and wives and children and people also that we would love to see download that app. Um, Case studies, if they want to read about case studies, how this crime interacts with the transportation community, it's a great way to read some inspirational stories, to read about some actual everyday heroes
Hmm.
who have made phone calls and prevented or interrupted active trafficking situations. And one really cool feature is this geolocation functionality that we've recently built into it. So if a driver drives cross country or cross border into Canada and they want to report a tip, they can go through the app to make a phone call and it will auto populate with the correct phone number to call. So it
Wow.
is a great tool. And how many of us have our phones within arm's reach at all times?
Every
So,
single one of us. If you don't at
right.
this point in time, I've got questions, to be frank, Heather.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's just the norm. So it's an easy way to begin the process of educating yourself on what human trafficking looks like, and being on the ready in case that you are thinking that you're seeing something.
And on that note, let's talk about are there any stories that you could tell us? And we don't have to take a bunch of time here, but I know, just based on what you do for a living, you've probably heard of so many of these stories. Can you talk to us at all about any stories that you might be able to share with us about when a truck driver really came through and played the hero role here?
Yeah, I would love to. So each year we give out an award called our Harriet Tubman Award, and it goes to somebody who made a phone call that resulted in a prevention or an interruption of an active trafficking situation. So one of our winners was Joe Aguayo. He worked for Winco Foods, and he was driving across a stretch of remote country, and this was back in 2022. So as he was driving, he noticed a woman on the side of the road. Her head was shaved and she had nothing on but a beach towel, and she looked like she was in distress. Now, it was a very remote area. There was no cell phone service out there, and he followed Winco's policy on not stopping and allowing an unauthorized rider in his cab.
Hmm.
He continued on down the road to the first police call box that he came to, reported what he saw, gave a general description, and then he figured that he had done all that he could do and left it in the hands of law enforcement. So, fast forward a couple months, he was on that same stretch of road. And he had a weather related incident happen with this truck and had to get a state trooper out there. He inquired about the report that he had made several months earlier, and it just so happened that it was the same state trooper who was helping him that had responded to that call. He said that that was a 27-year-old woman who was showing signs of having been drugged and was a victim of human trafficking. She spent several days in the hospital and was in very bad shape, and he said that Joe's call likely saved her life.
Wow.
So Winco Foods had trained their drivers, and many people would have, especially in that remote area, just driven past because it was so remote, and maybe they just would have potentially seen her as a problem and not been willing to stop.
Hmm.
Joe decided that that woman was a human being and obviously in need of some help. And so he did what was right. He picked up the phone, made a phone call, and that resulted in the woman actually being able to be released from the hospital and set up with a caseworker who helped her in the aftermath of her trafficking. The state trooper also said that that portion of highway had become a dumping ground of sorts for the indigenous population. She wasn't the first one who had been found out there. So a simple act like that can save a person's life.
Yeah, and I mean the who knows what happens to that poor woman if Joe decides not to make that call, and the award that he received, obviously, I'm sure is a drop in the bucket compared to how big his heart feels that he was actually able to just that easy make a phone call and save someone's life. Um, and is there anything that comes along with this award? Obviously, does he get honored at a convention or something like that?
Yeah, we put together a ceremony of sorts, and it comes with a $5,000 prize. It's
Wow.
presented by Progressive Insurance. So we want to know anytime a phone call is made by a truck driver. We want people to let us know. And for the companies who are setting up this training program within their company, we want them also to come up with some sort of internal reporting process so that they can be aware of any of their drivers who are making a call and celebrate their actions, and then let us know as well, so that we can, have number one, we want to celebrate too, but also we want the nominations, so we can consider them for this award each year.
Sure, sure. Yeah, celebrate indeed. I mean, there's so many things in this world that it's a lot positive and maybe a little bit negative, or it's 50-50. This is one of those things that is 100% positive. Every single person that gets certified, every single person that gets helped, every single thing that is learned, it's all positive and it all helps. And you could probably echo this sentiment, but I've been doing podcasts for truck drivers here for a little over 2 years now. And one thing I know about them is they are some of the most generous and giving and just kind people that want to help. They give back to their communities. They're constantly doing clothing drives and food drives, and they're always donating to causes. This is probably the best group of people, best group of professionals to turn to for help with something like this. We got a lot of veterans in this community, a lot of people that have already served their country in some capacity and are looking for ways to extend that service while they move America, very literally.
Yes, and we recognize what a great community of people the trucking industry is. We also recognize that there are everyday heroes, that want to affect change with their career.
Mhm.
And not everybody's in a position to do that, but the trucking community very much so is in the right position. They're often in the right places at the right time, and they truly can be everyday heroes.
Yep, they seriously can. Now, before I let you get out of here, because obviously talking about the Harriet Tubman Award and the phenomenal thing that Joe did, I think is paramount. But I also want to give Truckers Against Trafficking their flowers here too, because you guys have been the recipient of quite a few awards. There's a kind of an exhaustive list on your website that talks about all of them, but this one right at the very top, 2024 Department of Transportation Combating Human Trafficking in Transportation Impact Award. I mean, they might as well just call it the Truckers Against Trafficking Award. It sounds like it's right up your alley, and I can't think of anybody more deserving than you guys to end up with that one on your shelf.
Well, that was for one of our initiatives called Youth on Transportation, which is a really magnificent initiative that obviously folks should learn more about, because our youth, we need to be protecting them. Not only are we in the trucking community, but we're also in the bus community and energy, as I said. And, within that bus industry, think about those potential victims, the youth who are riding transportation, and the opportunities that we have to see something and do something. So yeah, we were very honored to receive that award.
And you can read more about the Youth and Transportation Initiative right at the website there. Once again, that's tatnonprofit.org. You can download the app there. You can find all the training videos there. You can read more about the phenomenal work that Truckers Against Trafficking is doing. Heather, I just want to thank you so much for your time here today. This has been phenomenal. I also have this little thing that I do with all the drivers, and I would feel remiss if I didn't offer you the same courtesy I offer them. When we're wrapping up a conversation with the drivers, I always say, the floor is yours at the end. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about today that you might want to touch on or you think is important for fleet owners and operators, independent owner operators, fleet drivers, anybody that might be listening to this podcast? I would love to hear it. So take your time, please, as much as you need.
Yeah, let me think about that. I think, given the opportunity to stand before a room full of people in the trucking community, I just want to thank them. Our world does not function without you all. We at TAT, and I recognize what a noble industry it is, and the effects that would trickle down throughout our country if you all didn't do the jobs that you do. So thank you for that. I'd love to talk with you about getting trained, becoming a certified trucker against trafficking. So please do reach out. If you go to our website, there is a general email that you can find and contact us, and we'll hook you up with a person like me who can help get you started on a path to becoming certified.
That's awesome. And you know what? I can't believe that I didn't mention this because I've seen so many of them in my travels, but get yourself a sticker, right? That's what you get when you get certified. You get a sticker to put on the truck. And I've talked to plenty of drivers that have that sticker on the truck. They hold it as a personal point of pride. So you're lagging back if you don't have your TAT certification. That's all there is to it. That's how we'll finish this one off today. Director of Industry Training for Truckers Against Trafficking, Heather Fry, you've been phenomenal today. Thank you so much. I would like to say that maybe in the future we'll get you back on here again. I have a feeling that some of these liquid drivers are going to go get certified, and they might even start making phone calls, and if they happen to save somebody, we'll get you back on here so you can talk to them directly, okay?
Awesome. Thanks, Marcus. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Heather. Well, I hope that interview had the same gravity for you that it had for me getting to conduct it. I feel very privileged to have gotten to spend almost a full half an hour with Heather Fry and just listen and ask questions and learn about everything that Truckers Against Trafficking has to offer and what they're doing for our great nation, and what you, I think more importantly, are doing for our great nation. Because, listen, Truckers Against Trafficking is a fantastic idea. It's great to see it come to fruition and work out and help as many people as it has. But I think the operative term here is truckers, right? This is truck drivers saving people. And that's who we're talking to. So, like I said, I really hope that the gravity of that interview was in place for you as much as it was for me. Big thanks to Heather Fry, Director of Industry Training for Truckers Against Trafficking, for coming on the show. I do want to reiterate a few things that she said there because we talked about a lot, and it's easy for things to get lost in the shuffle. So let's go back over a couple of numbers here, okay? The most important number I want you to know, 888-3737-888, okay? We only mentioned that once in the interview, but that is the human trafficking hotline. This is for if you see something that makes your stomach a little weird, you see something that causes a double take, you see something that just doesn't look right. You truckers know how to trust your gut, okay? You've driven into what looks to be a pretty ominous storm, and you've gone, I got a gut feeling that this is going to blow by before I get there, and you've been right. Or you've said, I got a gut feeling that if I don't shut down, I might not get the choice, and you've been right. Trusting your gut is a big part of the job that we do, okay? You do, not we, not me. I am not the guy. You guys are the guys. But it's important to trust that gut when you see something that could be off, something that doesn't look right. She told the story of Joe Aguayo calling about that young woman on the side of the road, probably saved her life, okay? But there's a couple different phone numbers to remember. Obviously, one of them's 911, but if you don't see an emergency, if this is just two people walking through a truck stop or a rest area, then 911's not where you want to go. We don't want to stress emergency services if we can keep from it. Obviously, first responders, very important part of how we keep this whole ship afloat. So if it's not like a dire emergency right now, this is the number, 888-3737-888. That's your human trafficking hotline. Make sure to hit it up if you see something suspicious, because as Heather said, that's all we want is just a call. All we want is a call, and if we can make something happen, if we can do a little bit of investigating and figure out if there's an issue here, fine. And listen, nobody wants to be falsely accused of something like this. I get that, but with the staggering number of victims that we're talking about here, both worldwide and domestically, I think it's very important to trust your gut. Once again, if they're not doing anything wrong, no harm will come to them, and everything will be just fine. If they are doing something wrong, we need to put a lid on that in a heartbeat and get them slammed up in a nice, small, cold, uncomfortable cell. And of course, we're not talking about the victim here. We're talking about the perpetrator. So again, 3737 888. I know that phone number doesn't follow that typical, Kevin James talks about it in one of his stand-ups, that ba 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 ba. It doesn't follow phone number rhythm, but it's almost easier to remember because of it. 888 3737 888. It's simple. It's easy to remember. Put it in your phone so you have it if you see something a little bit wacky going on. Another number I wanted to reiterate, 2,063,629 and counting people that have been helped by Truckers Against Trafficking. That's a big number, and it's always going up. And as Heather said, kind of a drop in the bucket, but we're working, and it's positive momentum, all going in the right way. And a couple of other things, just one more number here that I think is very important. I wanted to pull some important numbers. 83% of human trafficking victims personally know their trafficker. And you guys, my heart breaks, okay? I happen to be very fortunate. I come from a very strong family system. There was only 4 of us in the household, but I've got a very close extended family as well, and a lot of people that I trust and that I love, and that when I was a kid and when I was vulnerable, didn't take advantage of me. And I can't thank them enough for that, for being good people, and for also hopefully raising me in the same light. So yeah, it's a bit earth-shattering to me to know that there's people out there whose families, people that they love, would do this to them, would put them through this. But it is a fact. And as sad of a fact as it is, we're here to bring you facts. We're here to give you information. And I just hope that we can get a few truck drivers from Liquid signed up here to go through the program. It's really not that labor intensive. It's some videos. You can digest it very easily. If you download their app, like she said, which is available over at the website, tatnonprofit.org, you can take those classes as you feel, or watch those videos, as you feel the need or you find the time. And it's not something you have to do all in one fell swoop, okay? You're not going to a class here or anything. If you're going to do this on your own, it's set up in a way to make it very easily to work around pretty much any schedule. So very cool stuff there. And don't forget, I think it's really cool because I know how proud drivers are of their Truckers Against Trafficking stickers. You get certified, you're going to get one of those bad boys. So, and who knows, you might be the next person that ends up with a $5,000 prize package because you made a phone call because you trusted your gut. And that's what this is all about, Liquid. Let's go out and save some people. You guys, you are all great people. So many great people that work at this company. I know it. You know it. We talk about it all the time. Always looking for a way to give back. Always looking for a way to help out, go the extra mile. That's what the gold standard of drivers does. And that's what Liquid Trucking does. So if you're interested, you can always reach out to me. Shoot me an email, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. I will personally send you all of the information that you need to get set up for this. If you would like to text me, if you have my phone number, you can text me. I also send some texts out through your guys' system every now and then. If you see me text in there and you're like, hey, I remember the Truckers Against Trafficking episode and I want some of that stuff. It doesn't matter what I'm talking to you about. It doesn't matter what I'm requesting that you get back to me with for podcast purposes. If you want that information, you tell me and you will have that information. It's that simple, all right? Want to get as many of you guys signed up and certified as we possibly can. Get those stickers rolling on those pretty white Liquid trucks. All right, Liquid Trucking, that's going to pretty much do it for me today. I know that this was kind of a heavy episode, and I appreciate you sitting in for it with me. It was a lot of fun is such a tough word. I felt like I grew as a person today because I learned so much, and I learned about how bad of a problem we're really facing here and how sinister of a problem it really is. So thank you again to Heather Fry for coming on the show. We will definitely look her back up again in the future because we're just going to keep in touch with Truckers Against Trafficking and make sure that we stay on top of their mission, help them out any way that we can, and obviously give them a platform to plug what they've got going on. That does it for episode 61. We will see you next week, and next week's is going to be a doozy. We're I don't even know. We're calling the episode McDriver, Bubblegum and Duct Tape. And I guess From here on out, you just get to sit here for a week and wonder what that's going to be about. Stay safe out there, drivers. Keep the shiny side up. Don't forget to go check out the podcast website by clicking the banner at the top of liquidtrucking.com. We'll see you all next week. Be safe out there.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.